welcome back to another Shared Brewing podcast. I'm Tyler and I'm here today with Joel.
Hey, how's everyone going?
Good, hopefully caffeinated.
Yeah, big time.
You had some coffees this morning?
Yeah, I've had a few actually. Yeah, had a Brill as always, but it's actually at my parents' place, so they don't have a coffee machine. It's perfect because
Nice.
we just take a jar of Brill and away we go. Got some delicious coffee ready to go.
That's
and then
perfect.
My brother works at a roastery cafe on the Sunshine Coast in Queensland, and we had a batch brew, long black, flat white.
Oh my gosh.
All of the above. So I was definitely caffeinated on my drive home.
Beautiful. Well, I made a latte at home as usual, and it was really bad. Really bad. I just completely messed up the milk, but when you just don't feel like making it again, so I just went with it. But luckily my friend shouted me a cold brew on the way in this morning to the studio, so
Perfect.
I'm fine. I'm happy with that.
And cold brews are definitely caffeinating, so
Yeah, I'm not too far gone, which
Yeah.
is good.
yeah, nice.
So what are we going to talk about today?
Well, I reckon what we should start on is what excites us the most about coffee.
Okay, that's good.
What gets us really, every day just getting excited about it. You can sort of fall in and out of specialty coffee, but ultimately you're always drawn back to that amazing cup every day or every morning. It's like that ritual, as we've covered in past episodes, that ritual of just having that beautiful, delicate, almost like when you have coffee with milk, it's like a dessert. Then you have a black coffee and you're just wanting to have, taste all the perfections and just nothing stopping or interfering with any of the flavor of the actual coffee itself. And I think it's just there's so much excitement to be involved with coffee.
That's it. And there's so much knowledge and depth to coffee that kind of goes way beyond just grabbing a coffee on the daily. And I often get asked as well, how do you guys make a whole podcast about coffee? How is there that much to talk about? How do you run events around it? So many things to talk about. And I kind of stop and actually go back each time. I'm what does actually excite me about coffee? What has thrown me into this world where I'm all right, I suddenly want to dedicate, so much time each of my week, each of my day, learning more about coffee, chatting to people like yourself, chatting to other people and making friends in that. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, and drinking it.
And drinking it is,
the best part.
Yeah, plain and simply got to be the best part.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that stand out for you that really keep you coming back into coffee? What is it that made you first jump into it? I mean, we've covered a little bit of that in previous episodes talking about our personal histories, but what is it about coffee?
I think it's just because, the thing that gets me is that you can have so many different brew methods. You can drink coffee so many different ways. You can add it to food products. You can cook with it. There's a lot to do with it. And a lot you can, involve it in. But ultimately, the different, regions that grow coffee, how that affects the taste, how different farming techniques, different processing methods, different coffee plant varietals, the types of trees, so many different variables that can just change that cup, that caffeinated cup can just be completely changed by just a whole bunch of different things. And I think that's what's really exciting about it too, because you get it's very innovative. People want to push the boundaries and try new things. People are introducing really awesome alternative milks now and things like that, because obviously people wanting to sort of kind of steer away from dairy and things. So I'm pretty confident in the next few years you'll start to see some alternative milks that are used in competition, and 5-10 years down the track you'll probably find that there will be some sort of alt milk that just works so well with coffee, really just blends well, similar to dairy milk. Dairy milk and coffee go really well together, hand in hand. There are people out there that don't like it, but I just think the fats in dairy milk and just the complexity of dairy milk really just add to espresso. And it's like cooking, chefs use butter and fat to cook with.
Yeah, it's there's the basic ingredient, which is the coffee, but there's so many other avenues that kind of stem from that, and so many different paths you can take with it, which actually makes it have so many layers.
That's it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, then you've just got so many other brew methods, and it's crazy.
Definitely.
You know,
For me, it's like the process. I think that you actually have to get quite involved, and like it kind of takes a lot of brain space, but like in a really fun, creative way to actually just make a cup of coffee, like a good cup of coffee, and then having to be able to approach it in different ways as well. Like, or you might go to a cafe and you're really interested in their process, so you actually are chatting to them about how they make it. I think that's something that takes my fancy on it, is just like the actual approach and the process of that,
and different recipes, and how, you know, like there's also different opinions and all sorts of things. Like
exactly.
You know, it's great. Like I think it's
quite political there too.
Yeah. Which, I mean, just like anything really, like everyone has their opinion on certain things, and I think it's one of those great products that can just keep on giving.
Definitely.
And you can keep on pushing that boundary, and, you know, just keep on creating new and exciting ways to enjoy coffee.
Well, yeah, it's crazy how, like, I'm not sure, you know, I'm sure there's plenty of different types of products and careers where, like, or jobs even, that you show up and it does change every day, but coffee is always going to be changing every day. You know, you're going to have to be dialing it in differently, or you could try something different. I was chatting to a guy recently. He was saying that his brew's always changing at his home machine between breakfast time and lunchtime.
Yeah.
And like, that's been a challenge, but we've been chatting on and off about that and working through those processes. And it's so rewarding once you get to that point as well.
Yeah.
When you figure that out, or like you start to get to know your own equipment.
Yeah.
Or your own processes, or even just like start to identify when a coffee is good or bad, or like, you know, quote unquote good or bad, by your standards, or what you're chasing out of that cup.
Yeah, I mean, like, I can completely agree with you there. Like, it's just, I think there's just so many different avenues you can take it, and that's what's really exciting about it.
What are some of the key moments that you've had, or maybe that you've come across, where you've felt yourself just get into that flow with it, or you've felt yourself really, like, you know, you must even lose yourself a little bit, where maybe you don't realize that you're so into it, and you're so, you know, would it be when you're behind the machine, or when you're cupping or roasting even, or anything like that? Like, what are some moments that stand out for you?
Probably recently cracking open a green bean bag, like, you know, a 60 kilo bag of green coffee, and it's smelling like cider, like apple juice cider. I was just like, whoa.
Wow. I didn't expect that.
And
That's
you're just
cool.
like, wow, it smells amazing. Even one of the decafs that we're working with at the moment, it's just like, it smells incredible. It, like, you open up that bag and you're just like, oof, like just this aroma of just like fruits, and, you know.
Yeah, the smell actually is a lot of it, because, I mean, that's part of your senses and part of discovering the coffee itself, but usually you would just immediately think of taste. That's where it kind of comes down to, but the smell is a massive part of that experience as well.
I mean, that's probably, and like also, you know, the coffee that we've had here a couple of times, that Pastime Roasters carbonic maceration Colombia. I'm a bit like in two minds about, like, I love carbonic maceration. I think it's like crazy that, you know, processing methods are just going to that absolute,
that's a whole
next
massive
scientific
topic
level.
that
and
we
it
could go down as well.
Yeah, like anaerobic fermentation, carbonic maceration. Like, there's so many of these new, like, especially like alcoholic ways of like fermentation, like fermentation used for alcohol and wine making, and, you know, whiskey and cognac and things like that. Like, they're using those techniques now for coffee, and
it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, you've got to be very, very, very accurate with what you're doing, because it can change the outcome of the coffee. Like, you've spent, you know, a long time growing, and then all of a sudden you ferment it for, say, an extra like 4 hours or something. It can really change and affect.
It's pretty scary.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
you've got a whole crop, or you've got a whole bag of green beans. Or...
Yeah, that's it. You've just picked a whole bunch of coffee, and then it's just gone crazy. But then it's a really good opportunity, because these farmers are now able to, you know, put their coffee onto the market and get these higher scores with Q grade, and sell it for more, which means that, you know, ultimately, like, when it comes down to it, if it tastes great, does it matter which way it's processed, or which, you know, as long as they're obviously not adding, you know, chemicals and things to it.
Yeah, totally. It keeps it keeping it natural.
But if they're just using fermentation processing, then, you know, why not? Like, why not do that type of thing.
Agree,
and
yeah.
if their score is going to go from like an 84 to like a 90, you know, it's like that farmer then can sell it for more, and then it goes back to them. And you know, a lot of these countries that grow amazing coffee are developing or third world nations, and it's great that they can get that money back into their communities, hire more people, you know, pay for like dental care and things like that for their employees. And you know, it's just,
that's amazing.
it's cool how it's just like literally just like the game is changing, and it's constantly changing, which is amazing.
I think we've discovered one of Joel's areas of passion within coffee.
Yeah.
Going back to the farming, you know, the origins of the actual coffee, and seeing it come out in all different ways there. Like, it's crazy just how many types of coffee we can have from what could be the same, you know, essentially the same crop, but different processing methods, different times of year, different years itself. You know, one crop could be completely different the next following year. And I actually love too when you go to a cafe and they actually tell you that, you know, they've got maybe the second batch from a certain farm, and how much different it is, or whether it's developed, or whether they've provided, you know, maybe some different tools that the farmer's been able to use to develop their coffee further. And I love seeing that connection there as well.
Yeah,
there's so many different points we could talk about.
The weather's not the same every year. Of course, you get seasons, but climate change is playing a big part in this now, and so farmers are now finding it harder to, you know, get consistency in growing crops. So flavor profiles do sort of change, and you know, it's becoming more challenging. Yet, in saying that, other areas are able to now grow coffee when they probably weren't able to 50 years ago or so. So I mean, it's like one of those like bit of a touchy subject, but
there's pros and cons to it, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
Different sides to look at with it, but it is cool to see it developing and seeing that education go further.
At the end of the day,
back to the source.
An organic product, it's not always going to be the same. It can vary, and I think that's the really cool thing about it.
Yeah, it's even just cool. Like when you get a bag of coffee, I find it quite interesting to see that develop over, say, the 2 weeks that you use it.
Yep.
I mean, that would usually be the fresh windows, maybe say 2 weeks from roast, would you say?
I'd probably say
3 weeks?
7 to 21 days, but it all just depends as well, the roasting profile. And,
a week in and then a couple of weeks after that.
Yeah.
But it's really cool to see the flavors change as you're making that at home, or, you know, just in that different time.
And how you've got to change your recipe over that time as well.
Yep.
Like, you know, you could be using the same recipe for the first sort of like between 7 to, you know, 18 days, and all of a sudden the last like few days of you using the rest of the bag, you're just like, I can't get it to taste right.
Yeah.
So you got to add a bit more coffee, change your brew ratios, do all that sort of thing, and it's really exciting. It's cool.
Oh, crazy world. Yeah, this is good to even remind us of this, because I keep going back to that question. Like, when I do get asked what is so interesting about coffee, is like, it's actually so many that I almost draw a blank. So many reasons that I draw a blank at first. I'm like, where do I start with this?
Yeah. Or you can talk about one thing, and then all of a sudden you're like, hang on a minute, what's this? And you go on a tangent, and you're just like down some rabbit hole where you're just like, there's so many other rabbit holes that bring me back to this thing. Yeah.
Well, it's good too, like when we're talking about friends. I love having some friends around to make coffee for, or even if we're doing it on Instagram or something like that. And just having that process of being able to share that with friends, and them actually try it out for themselves. Maybe they're making a V60 for the first time, and you're sort of instructing them on that, or, you know, maybe they're just watching and they're like, I didn't even know you could do this. Like, just that process is really cool to have fun with and share.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
It's like when I'm training like new accounts that we get on, I do a training session with them, and like first thing I say to them, it's like usually about a 2-hour training session. I say to them, I'm like, I'm going to absolutely hammer you guys with a lot of information. However,
incoming.
I don't expect you to retain every bit of that, and we're going to continue to work with you over the duration of you using our coffee. So it's just like, you know, you just like, I go through like identifying under extracted, over extracted, optimal extraction. I think that's probably one of the most important things to go through.
Okay.
Like, I guess beginners, because you show them, like, you make a under extracted shot, and then you make it, well, first of all, actually I'd make a perfect shot, or like as perfect as we can get it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think you can ever make the most perfect shot.
It's always going to be
there can always be
debatable.
something better.
Yeah.
I guess that's what excites me about coffee as well, because you're always like I can make it better. I reckon I can make it better.
Striving for that perfect cup, or at least getting it as close to what you think it's going to be like, which
that's it.
Predictable.
Trying to like hit all of those tasting profiles or tasting notes that the coffee, the single origin or the blend or whatever is like showcase for.
Yeah.
And so what I'll do is I'll, go, okay, this is what the shot's meant to taste like. We're tasting, blueberry, cacao, hazelnut. And they're like, oh yeah, I can actually. And you're sort of just guiding them through it. You're at the first sip, you're like, oh, I'm getting the blueberry. And then, oh yeah, I get that nice sort of cacao, and then that kind of hazelnut finish as and then that lingering flavor in your mouth is, something else. And then I go, okay, let's try under extracted. It's where you get like sort of sour, like hollow flavors. Like it's a bit flat, there's nothing, like you're a bit like, it's a bit sort of, unripe in a way. And then I, make them a over extracted coffee where you start to get like the bitterness and the, like astringency, and not really like those ideal flavors that you want. They're sort of a bit more harsher than, say a optimal extraction or an under extraction. And I think that's like the ultimate starting point when teaching or like talking to someone who's super fresh into coming.
That's great
coffee.
to know. I didn't even know that myself. I mean, I've sort of tried that stuff at home.
Yeah.
Where I can, have a rough, loose idea of like, okay, I think this is under extracted. I think this is over extracted.
Yeah.
Or like this feels spot on. It tastes spot on. It's got a good mouthfeel, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I haven't thought of doing it where you've got all three.
Yeah. and you can sort of put them all back to back. Like you don't have them sitting side by side because obviously temperature change and things like that. But like you start off with one, then do another, and then do another. And then you kind of like, you get a much more sort of understanding, like sort of spectrum of where coffee can go, which I think is really exciting.
That is exciting.
Yeah.
Another thing, and this is just a little question that came to mind, and it's something that I've been wondering because I've been finding with the better coffee that I have at home, the more forgiving it seems to be. Is that a thing?
I think it is. Like I think, you're just going to get a lot more, I guess, it's just when it comes down to like a quality thing, like if it comes actually back to its roots, the tree, the quality of farming techniques, soil, processing methods, like I think they play a big part in that, and like also roast profile as well, roasting it properly, making sure that it's cooked all the way through and it's not, overdeveloped, underdeveloped, like it becomes like, it's not only just extraction at home or at work or wherever, there's a whole other pathway that starts before that. So, if that's all kind of in line, and then you go home and you're like, oh, that ran 5 seconds shorter or 5 seconds longer, or it actually still tastes pretty good. Like I'm still pretty happy with it. That's pretty much the situation that I often have. I'll like I generally think
press the button off a little too late or something.
Everyone else before you has done a really good job.
Upload the team down.
Yeah. So you're at the front of the train, and then everyone at the back's done what they're meant to do, and then you're just like, oh, whoops, I took the wrong turn, guys, but we'll still get there in the end.
Yep.
Yeah, I took a shortcut. Yeah.
Oh, it is crazy. It's almost a lot of pressure sometimes having that being like the end of the line.
Yeah.
But, if you're the one then tasting it, then no one else is going to know at least.
The worst is actually when I am training one of our new wholesale accounts and I make them like an under or over extracted coffee and they go, I really like this one. I'm like, like, I mean, you can't go, oh, you shouldn't. Like you just go, well, that's just what they like. Like,
fair enough.
There are actually, I've noticed it, like especially specialty coffee these days, there's a lot of under extraction happening. And there's a lot of like, like it's not hugely, it's just that you...
How do you identify that?
It's just more sort of sourness coming through. Like you get it's more of the sour, but people confuse it with like acidity. Like a balanced acidity is where it's just like this really nice sort of like coating of, it's almost like juiciness. Like, that's probably a describer of a good
acidity. I do know what you mean, because like when I've had a really good espresso shot, it's like that.
Tastes juicy, but it's like you've almost just eaten a piece of fruit and you're like, the fruit's not going to be under or over extracted because it's fruit's great. And it's like the juice and the
ripeness.
Like the juice and like the pulp and everything together works
it brings a smile on my face. I just like, if I have a good espresso shot, I just take a sip and I'm like, big smile on my face.
Yeah.
I can't help it. And like, that's when I know it's just really hit that spot.
Yeah. And then like I think people now sort of go, especially with like sour beers and things like that these days. Like I like sour. Like I used to eat Warheads when I was a kid and stuff like that. Like I do like a bit of like,
I would wash off the sour stuff.
Yeah. See, like you get like my daughter, she loves blueberries, and I just would eat a blueberry, and some of the really small ones are really like punchy, and you're just like, whoa, like it's just like bit of a zing, and I like that. And then like I've noticed that there are a lot of like baristas and roasters and things like that who tend to sort of just go that more sort of route there, where I don't think it's a bad thing. I'm not saying that they're doing anything wrong. I just think that there is a bit of a trend in that sense where people's taste, like I find it to be the younger crowd coming through, which is like, you know, fair enough. That's just a demographic and a market that likes those sort of like more tangy flavor profiles, you know. And
while we're on sorry.
I'm a big fan of sour beers as well. So I'm probably one of those, like, if, you know, we were talking to a professional brewer of beer, they'll probably just like, oh, these bloody sours, all these kids are coming through, and I'll be like, I'm one of those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Quickly on that note as well, with the roast profiles and stuff like that, I think we've briefly touched on this on some other episodes, but I'm always curious too to know, like, I've just seen a bit of a trend myself with a lot of the specialty coffee roasters that I go to regularly, or like the cafes that serve the roastery coffee that I like.
The cooked beans.
Yeah, the cooked beans seem to be a lot lighter roasted
at
the places that I regularly go compared to some other places, and maybe even like a bit of an older demographic. I've just found to maybe enjoy the darker roasts a bit more. Like, do you think that's actually true, or is that just something that I've sort of picked up?
Look, it depends. Like, I think like you can have a really light roast, but you can still have a developed coffee.
Yeah.
So you can still have, it's almost like, say you're cooking something on the barbecue. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm not going to say meat or veg or anything, because, you know,
cooking
2020 these days. Cooking something on the barbecue, if you're punching it with heaps of like flame, it like charcoals the outside.
Yeah.
And then the inside's still raw.
It adds like that specific taste to it.
Yeah. So it's like similar to roasting. If you just like hit it with a lot of like, I guess, heat, and don't sort of gradually let that heat kind of like cook all the way through or evenly, then you're going to get like developed on the outside, and then the inside's going to be undeveloped, and sort of things like that. Like, it's like, that's kind of like a layman's way of explaining, but that's sort of like how you think about it, you know, and I think there are some people roasting these days where you can like I said, you can cook, like, you know, you can have a really light roast, but it still can be very developed, the coffee. I do sort of feel like sometimes when people go an omni roast, it's a bit of a like cop out. Not a cop out, but it's just like, I see it as like, oh, you can use it both, let's just leave it as that.
Right.
When I'm like, well, why don't you just
you're saying you could develop it a little bit further either way.
Yeah, so you could develop it a little bit further for espresso roast, or you can like, you know, keep it as it is and use it for filter coffee.
Right.
And, you know, there are some people who, you know, have very, very light espresso roast where I'm probably like, I've used that coffee for then filter, and I'm like, this tastes way better as a filter coffee than it does as espresso. If it was just a little bit more developed, it would have really cut through. And you'll notice that like a lot of those really light coffees, they will taste quite weak in milk.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And it's like, it's some people...
It's mostly the filters I'm talking about too. I should probably specify that. More like the single origin filter coffee.
Yeah.
Filter roast that, you know, I've noticed. But also on the espresso side, it seems to be a lot darker or heavier at some places that I'll go, and I've just identified that seems to be a bit of a consistent thing that I'm seeing. But
people like a bit more body and that sort of thing, as opposed to more sort of like the lighter profiles that can come out of it. Again, as we always say here, it always comes down to personal preference.
Totally.
There are a lot of people out there.
There's no right or wrong there either.
Absolutely not. Like, I don't think that there's any right or wrong. Like, there's just, I do think that, you know, sometimes people might be limiting their market a little bit by, you know, doing that type of thing. But hey, you know,
that's totally fine though. I mean, it's
people
depends where they're aiming.
People don't want to spend $50 on instant coffee, and I'm selling instant coffee. So
it's not going to stop you. That's fine.
I'm like,
there's definitely a market there for it.
You can keep going to your Nescafes.
It's good, but I appreciate that there are those different ones too, and like I love seeing that people have their own locals and their own tastes, and whether that's that they'd like a darker roast or an omni roast or a lighter roast or a filter roast or whatever it is, it's nice that they can identify that. That's pretty cool. I think that's the first step towards appreciating coffee more in general.
That's it.
And what we're all about here.
That's it. And
So that's good.
like at the end of the day, if it tastes really good,
Enjoy.
do you think?
Well, I definitely want to throw that to the audience as well. That I'd love to hear more about what you guys actually look for in a coffee, in a specialty coffee, hopefully.
Yeah.
But
Hey, if you find some non-specialty coffee out there that tastes really good, let us know and we'll try
totally,
it.
we'll definitely try it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd love to keep that conversation going for sure, and actually, also like back to what this episode is sort of sparking on, which was what actually gets you excited about coffee. What keeps you coming back? What keeps you listening to this podcast? Is a great example, because you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't have something sparking your interest about coffee every day.
That's it.
As well, another thing for me too is that cafe interaction. We talked about this on our last episode, which was about the cafe experience, and a lot of the excitement around coffee is the culture, and it's just sharing that experience of having a coffee with a friend, or ducking into your local coffee or cafe and chatting to the baristas there, and just having a nice experience to start off your day. That in itself can just be enough to keep you coming back to coffee every day.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
actually just the coffee that you're getting.
I mean, there are people that wake up in the morning, they probably have a subpar coffee at home that they make themselves, and they know that they're just like, this isn't the best, but they're like, I can't wait to get to the office, log in, set up, check my emails quickly, and then bang, down to the cafe. And
that's exactly what I did today.
Get someone to make me a beautiful coffee and not have to think about it. And even this morning, like my brother made me a few coffees, and I was just like, it's so nice when someone makes you a really good coffee, you don't have to do anything. And you're just
nice.
Like, thank you.
It is good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Or you go away for a couple of days to a place that doesn't have, your regular coffee shops, and you're just like so excited to get back to them. It gives you a bit of a fresh,
that's it.
Excitement on them.
I messaged him and I was just like,
appreciation.
Those coffees were so good. I'm so appreciative of it. He's like,
oh, that's
thanks,
nice,
man. I was like, oh, mate. I had that sip and I was just like, drive home's going to be a bloody dream.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex and I had that recently when we found a place at the coast on the drive home, about to hit that highway traffic.
Yeah.
I was like, there's got to be a good cafe around here. And we found one serving up some slide coffee.
Yeah, nice.
From the sunny coast, and it was awesome. Just pulled right in there, and grabbed a couple for the road, and that was a great drive home.
Yeah, that's it.
Nice. Well, we might finish this episode there, but we have heaps more to talk about this on our next episode.
Absolutely.
So as always, guys, reach out to us, send us a message, let us know what you're enjoying about coffee, what keeps you coming back into the loop of specialty coffee, and what keeps you coming back and listening to us.
Yeah. And
love to know.
Any ideas on episodes or things you want to know about, and know, that we can help you out on, then
definitely. So I'm Tyler, this is Joel. Go follow TheMonday on Instagram. It's at the.monday.coffee. Of course, Joel has his project, which is Brill Instant Specialty Coffee. What's the handle for that one?
Brill Coffee.
Brill Coffee.
Yeah.
Go check them out. And guys, keep enjoying coffee every day.
That's it. Yeah.
Cool. We'll see you guys in the next one.
See you, team.
Cheers.